This week, my friends, we've got horror, we've got dog movies, and we've got Rambo. Courtesy of Van Conner and me, Paul Ross. It's our Freeview film recommendations of the week. I'm looking forward to this. I cannot remember a week in recent months we've had a more disparate bunch of films, and some people might think you're really recommending that, but I know we stand by our choices. So, Van, where would you like to take us first, sir? I think it's in the direction of capital H for horror, is it not? Good morning, Van.
It is indeed. Hello, Mr. Ross. How are you doing, sir? Always a pleasure.
Looking forward to this, I must say.
Well, this is one of those rare weeks where you're usually the guy that goes for this. I actually get to pick something from Talking Pictures TV for a change. I know it's usually your forte, but I'm taking it this week. And this week they have a movie I have a real soft spot for. It's one of those movies. I saw this in the mid 1990s because I lived in the Middle East, and all our movies were about 7 or 8 years old by the time they broadcast on cable or TV there. And it's the 1987 real cheese schlock horror thriller, The Stepfather, from 1987. And it stars, you might remember this, it starred Terry O'Quinn.
Yeah.
I think it was Terry O'Quinn. They became Terry Quinn later on. Most known now for playing Locke in Lost, playing John Locke in Lost. You know the J.J. Abrams series Lost. Also the Admiral in the classic Starship: The Next Generation, so Pegasus. And he's the psycho stepfather. He may or may not be psycho, but they don't really make much of a mystery out of it. Who, the son comes home, his divorced mum's got a new boyfriend who's seemingly all too perfect, but something's not too right with him, and they start to delve into the mission. He may or may not be a psycho, and given that there's at least 2 sequels to this from the original canon, you can probably guess which way that goes. This got remade in 2009, and they used what's his name, Dylan O'Brien, I think, from Nip Tuck, one of the guys from Nip Tuck.
The far too handsome guy from Nip Tuck. Yeah, I know the one you mean. Yeah.
Well, I think they were both too handsome in Nip Tuck for what the roles required. But they used Penn Badgley from You as the teenager in that, and it just didn't work. But it's a perfectly fine movie in the remake, but it's a great, schlocky, fun movie in the original. This is on Talking Pictures TV, as I say, tonight, 9:05. If you've never seen this, it's just a great schlock. This is the late 80s. When horror schlock, meant something.
And I remember this at the time. What I really liked about this was, it was a kind of, for me, previously unexplored niche. Quite often it's the mystery woman who turns up, either as the nanny or as the second mum, who's may or may not be a psycho, probably is if there are sequels. In this case, it's a dad who, taking on the single mum is too good to be true almost. Yes, he may well be too good to be true. So, I didn't even spot this was on, but I'm glad you've drawn it to our attention. So we can see this on Talking Pictures TV. What time tonight is it on? Or are they offering this in the afternoon as good family viewing?
Well, I think it would be good family viewing. This is basically what happens if, like, Homer Simpson dies and Ned Flanders is a murderer who becomes the new dad. This is on 9:05 tonight, but I want to point out as well, the remake, the 2009 remake, is on Saturday night. It's on, tomorrow at 11:40. So you can watch the original tonight, and you can watch the remake tomorrow night, 20 to midnight. I mean, the remake nowhere near as good as the original. Oh, it does have Amber Heard in it, back when she had her chance, before she was a nutter. So
allegedly, as we say, yes, allegedly.
Allegedly. I don't want the son coming after being caught or anything like that. But you can watch the original tonight, 9:05, and the remake, 20 to 12, tomorrow night. I've got a clip for you, and this is Terry O'Quinn he was the O' Quinn back then, obviously, letting the veil go just ever so slightly as he starts to realise it's all coming crashing down.
Make sure you're buying the right card for Father's Day. It's The Stepfather, Talking Pictures TV. Gulp. Here we go.
That idiot! That new girl can't... Susan, I never got anyone fired in my life, but that girl, I don't know.
You mean you still work there?
Of course. Where else would I be?
I don't know. I don't know what I thought. I'm sorry.
This is very upsetting. Old man Grace is still there.
No, forget it, honey. Forget it. She probably just got the name wrong or something.
Hodgkins, what's to get wrong?
What did you say?
Huh? Wait a minute. Who am I here?
Oh, my God, I've forgotten that bit. I mean, in that way, there's something to be potentially, something almost Hitchcokian about some of that, isn't it? It's kind of played for comedy as well as all good horror films should be from that era. But no, it's a genuinely chilling film, that one, so I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I've never seen the remake. I'll give that one a squint. Now, my first film is unusually for me, because although I do love all cinema, I very rarely get tempted by something that's, subtitles only and was regarded as a big art house smash. And it's a great film.
It is rare for you.
But I've got a belter this one. I actually paid my own good money to see this at the cinema because I'm a dog, always been a dog owner, dog lover. It comes up in our later doggy recommendation film. Morris Perez, though, was launched, I think, released in the year 2000. A Mexican film. I think it was the debut film as a director of Alejandro González Iñárritu. I mean, a brilliant director. And he wrote it with his long-term writing partner, Guillermo Arriaga, who died way too young, and that forced Iñárritu into a bit of a tailspin for a while. And basically, it's 3 stories interwoven, folks. And they've all got a dog as a link. There's one about a model who's involved in a terrible car crash, which is linked to another story that's ongoing. And there's also a mysterious hitman, sort of tramp, sort of vagrant, who looks after these ferocious but beautiful dogs he's kind of guiding and guarding. And there's a dog that links the various stories. There's a dog that gets trapped under floorboards. There's a dog that's involved in the car crash. There's a dog that accompanies this hitman with a fantastic settling, a denouement of a hit when he decides to let kind of matters take their own course. So it's a quite a dense film, an interwoven film. Not the jolliest of watches, I would say. And certainly as far as the treatment of the dogs in this, I would warn you that if you are like me, an animal lover, and you go into this unprepared, it's very disturbing indeed. Until, I've got no reason to doubt this, Iñárritu and the team said that everything was done under the auspices of the Mexican version of the RSPCA, and that the scenes when the dogs are fighting they're done using fast-cutting techniques. Obviously, the sound makes a difference. In fact, these animals were playing. They constantly had people monitoring it on set. But I found this film, I've read the reviews of it and thought, it sounds like a must-see. I think it got a BAFTA for Best Foreign Film of the Year, actually, the year it came out. And quite why American films are never regarded as foreign films, but a Mexican film is a debate for another time, possibly. However, I recommend this one, folks. It's on at 5 minutes past midnight tonight, so it's effectively just creeps into Saturday morning, but cut me some slack. It's called Amores Perros, 5 minutes past midnight on Film 4. What did you make of this one the first time you saw it? Because it's part of a trilogy, and I thought 21 grams was a bit OTT and too pretentious. Babel, I thought, was fantastic. This, though, for me, is the real stand-up, the jewel in the crown of these 3 films, I think.
Well, I'm the other way. I never really took to Babel. And I know, like, if you're an aspiring cinephile, then you have to get into what we now refer to as the 3 amigos of contemporary, of 21st century Mexican cinema, which are Iñárritu, Alfonso Cuarón, and Guillermo del Toro. And obviously, Guillermo del Toro, I think, is kind of the legacy owner of the trilogy, of the 3 of them. But Iñárritu, like, he's a great director. He always has been. It's weird to me that it took so long for him to get an Oscar, because he didn't really get his Oscars until The Revenant with DiCaprio, which was
also on this weekend. The Revenant's on film for this weekend, I think.
Oh, absolutely worth checking out. And you can see how he does. He's very clearly always been destined for, award-laden greatness. And he does stand, toe to toe aside the likes of, the other 2, alongside the likes of Cuarón and Guillermo del Toro. I mean, my favorite will always be del Toro, because he's the imaginative one. I think he's the one who goes into the more fantasy realm, and he gives us things like Shape of Water and Hellboy, and he's the comic book guy, and he's the nerd-friendly one. But I do feel like Iñárritu, he's the auteur of the bunch. He's the, I want the real world made filmmaker one, even though he made Birdman, which is absolutely ludicrous. Brilliant, but ludicrous.
As is, I suppose, brilliant but ludicrous, Bardo, which basically is a kind of meditation on the Buddhist concept of the Bardo. Another with Bridget Bardot, which is a kind of luminous state between death and rebirth. And he gets that into a movie, which made money, but was a bit of a melon twisting head scratcher, I must say. It was described at the time, I think, as an epic psychological black comedy drama, which is a mishmash of lots of genres. Stick a chase film in there and a western, he's covered all the bases, I think.
I think so. I think calling it that's kind of charitable, dumbing it down to that, if I'm being honest. Like, none of these guys made simplistic movies, but Iñárritu he's the guy who I think made the most grounded, gritty, real world ones, definitely.
Here we go. It's Morris Perez. It's on 5 minutes past midnight tonight. It's on Film 4. We haven't got a clip because it's all subtitles. In fact, we'll play you a burst of the trailer with the sound down. There we go. And let's go on to your second recommendation there, Ben. If we could, what's your Saturday choice, matey, please?
I've got for you Paul Haggis's directorial debut. Paul Haggis, Oscar-winning screenwriter, made his directorial debut in 2010 with this. And this is a remake of a French film called Pour Elle, which translates to For Her. It's called The Next 3 Days. It stars Russell Crowe, still relatively in the infancy of her career, Elizabeth Banks as Crowe's wife. And the idea idea here is that you've got Russell, and this is meant to be sort of a real-world set, very quite gritty thriller. This is on Great Movies, Saturday night, 9 o'clock. This is really, really good. I hadn't started review. I was about to start reviewing movies, like, for a living when this came out. It's one of the last movies I saw, like, as a civilian, as we say, and I really love this. The idea is, in both versions, the original French and this one, you've got a husband who, is forced to answer the question, what do you do in this scenario when your wife is accused of a crime she didn't commit? There's no way to acquit her of it. What happens when the only solution is you have to break her out of prison? So you have Russell Crowe in Pittsburgh. He's faced with the dilemma. He's a relatively ordinary blue-collar worker. How do I, as a regular man, break my wife, who I know is innocent, out of custody, out of jail? How do we go off, become fugitives, and live the dream? Do you know, it's a tight, tidy, really great thriller. I have nothing but good things to say about this. So you can see this Saturday night, 9 o'clock on Great Movies. I've got a clip for you, and this is Russell Crowe asking an expert he's found online, played in relative, pretty much a cameo by Liam Neeson, as what do you do? How do you stage this breakup? So I'm going to let Mr. Neeson, I'm going to let Mr. Taken himself take it away.
So I must admit, I'd forgotten he was in it. It is a great film, this, folks. And here he is, the man with the greatest gravelly voice this side of Lee Marvin, Liam Neeson, in that great film, The Next 3 Days. Off you go, Liam.
Where are you from?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh's tough. So many bridges and tunnels they can block off. From the time they make the call, the police can have the center of the city sealed tight in 15 minutes.
How can they be so exact?
After 9/11, Homeland Security made every city have a lockdown plan. Downtown Pittsburgh, Philly, Boston, Minneapolis, 15 minutes. They can do DC in under 10. Within 35 minutes, they can have cops at every toll booth on the interstate and be running rolling stops in the secondary roads. They won't have your photograph yet, but they will have your description.
A great thriller. It's almost like one of those great high-concept thrillers. And talking of high-concept, how about some low-budget schlock now? This was remade as well. No one knew it was good. It was 1975. I just started at university, and I was living in Herne Bay in Kent. And the Herne Bay Odeon, now sadly gone before, showed Death Race 2000, and it was filled to the rafters with, I think people came from all over Kent, possibly all over the south of England, to see what we then knew was going to be a cult classic, produced by Roger Corman. Not Roger Borman, that's Martin Borman's son. He's the Nazi. Nothing to do with him at all. Roger Corman produced it. I mean, the master of all those kind of Edgar Allan Poe kind of adaptation with Vincent Price. He made the Star Wars kind of any big hit film he was involved in. What do you call them? Mockbusters, I think you call them, don't you? But this was out there on its own. Yeah, it's got Sylvester Stallone in his first time I remember seeing him as a kind of almost a lead actor. He's not the star. That's David Carradine, who's fantastic in this. Of course he is. Mr. Kung Fu himself. And it's very simply in the future where the whole of America seems to be a freeway. It's ruled by a man they just call Mr. President. And for our delight and delectation, there are death races across the states. The cars are killing machines. You get points for different kind of pedestrians and people foolish enough to walk near the racetrack as you drive across racing and trying to kill each other. And that's all there is to it, basically. One long, chunky chase movie. Although, interestingly, I think the cinematography is by a bloke called Tak Fujimoto, who just before he made this had shot for the notoriously demanding Terrence Malick. He made Badlands with him. And after that, he worked with people like Jonathan Demme on films. I mean, almost the independent Hollywood filmmakers, if that makes sense. So this has got a great look to it. I'm not sure what print you're going to get on this one, because once again, it's on Talking Pictures TV, and they don't always get the kind of, cleaned up, fantastic version. But it's 11 o'clock. It's a great 11 o'clock on a Saturday night film. If you leave the pub early, or you start the takeaway and the beer early, stick this on. You will not be disappointed if you like car chases. And again, Corman's one of those people that gets now, at the time, people simply regarded him as this rip-off merchant. But I think he's a lot more than that. He's one of those people who keeps almost the old pioneering spirit of Hollywood alive.
Definitely. Well, he was, wasn't he? Because he gave rise to so many of the filmmakers that we now hold up as royalty, like James Cameron, Harrison Ford,
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson, who all started under the Roger Corman school. It's also worth noting that Roger Corman is single-handedly responsible for the first Fantastic Four movie in cinematic history. Like, Roger Corman is cinematic royalty, and I think were it not for a certain degree of snobbery and class, we would hold him in exactly the same regard that we do John Carpenter, I think, now as well. Like, he's one of the godfathers of contemporary horror.
And also, I think he's somebody that people outside of Hollywood, a lot of Europeans, and even, I think Akira Kurosawa really rated his version of the Edgar Allan Poe story, The Mask of Red Death, because it's kind of hypnotically beautiful. It's kind of film that Louis Buñuel might have made had he liked a horror film or two. So anyway, we've got to, without being too pretentious, it's Death Race 2000, the original version, from 1975, folks. I think that was the year, if memory serves, when West Ham won the FA Cup. 5 years later, we won the FA Cup again. Then nothing until last season. However, we've now got the European Conference, and the Europa Conference. I'm getting sidetracked. Death Race 2000, 11 p.m. tonight on Talking Pictures TV. Rev them up and let's get going.
The year 2000. America is a vast speedway. People line the streets to witness the greatest drivers on Earth in a race from sea to shining sea.
This is a death race.
You finish first, or not at all. Death Race 2000. Every car a deadly weapon. Every spectator a potential point. It's a cross-country road wreck, and the traffic is murder.
Who are you, anyway?
Best driver on Earth.
I don't want you to die.
He was built by the world's finest surgeons to drive the fastest car ever designed, and nothing can stop him now. Death Race 2000, rated R.
You wouldn't want to follow people out the driving if they've seen that. They might be slightly hyper-state, mightn't they, hitting the interstate freeways on that one. So that's Death Race 2000. Now, I'm back to a canine movie, and I've recommended this before. You've probably seen it before, but I guarantee were you to switch it on, it's on Film 4, Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock, you probably have to stay with it for the duration, or certainly until your favourite scenes have popped up. It is at times surprisingly, not exactly dark, but it is quite suspenseful, although, you know, because Tom Hanks is in it, and it ain't no, you know, serious bits, but it's not a solemn film, and it's not really a police procedural film. It's basically a variation on the Buddy film. It's from 1989, and it's Tom Hanks and a beautiful French Mastiff called Hooch. He's Turner. The dog's called Hooch. The dog witnesses the murder of his master. The dog is huge, slobbery, and ferocious. And in the end, of course, he's instrumental in helping solve the mystery of who killed his owner. Spoiler alert. On the way, Turner may find romance. Of course he does. And this was a huge film, I think, for the studio and in Tom Hanks' career, because it made, I mean, it's one of those, it really hit the spot with people, because Tom Hanks is absolutely charming in this, funny, but also a kind of slightly self-deprecating character. I think it was out in 1990, actually, in this country, but 89 in the States. And it made, as I said, I mean, the money this generated, I think, guaranteed that anything that he did after that was going to be absolutely kind of gold dust. And for the studio, they give him a green light, because he made big around this time as well. So it cost, I think, 10 million. It made 80 million. And it's always made money since. There was a rather poor Disney series, I think, which ran for a couple of series as well. But a charming and very funny film. Whether or not you like dogs, if you don't like dogs, then some of the saliva effects, because they do, when they shake this from side to side, which Tom Hanks attempts himself as a human being memorably in one scene. I think a lot of that was added. It's a great scene when he's on a stakeout with a dog, and he's just improving various conversations you'd have with a human being, which he has with the dog, which, of course, by the master of editing, looks really good indeed. It's a well-put-together film. No, it's a cinematic masterpiece, but, you know, directed by Roger Spottiswoode, who's made some fantastic, interesting films, and this hugely financially successful film. And I think this is pretty much, maybe slightly later in the year, in a proper autumn Sunday afternoon, when you've had your late Sunday dinner and you've got a Sunday tea to look forward to, this would be a lovely comfort film in the afternoon, I think, Ben.
I think so. This is a movie as well. We all tend to, when we talk about like twin movies and talk about rival movies, this one had one starring James Belushi.
K9. Of course it did, you're right.
Yeah, K9. And that actually got a sequel as well called K911, in which I think the dog had kids. And, but obviously James Belushi.
Hang on, the dog had baby goats. The dog had baby goats. That's wrong on so many levels.
Do you know what? That'd be a more fun movie, if I'm honest. I remember it. But no, James Belushi very clearly is no Tom Hanks, though, and there's nowhere near the charm in either of them that you get from Turner and Hooch. This is Hanks, you know, on his Hanksiest. You know, this is Tom Hanks doing comedy I think this was the last time, really, that Tom Hanks got to do, on a mainstream stage, got to do the broad comedy that he'd risen to prominence with. Because after this, he sort of goes into more dramatic fare. Like, this is the last time he goes really broadly comedic before there starts becoming a dramatic aspect to it. And I remember referring back to this when he started A Man Called Otto last year, because there was more comedy in that than we were used to from him, and it was nice to see him go back to that wackier tone. But this is such a seminal movie. And you mentioned the amount of saliva in it. We just talked about Del Toro. This is about the most saliva you can have in a movie without involving Guillermo del Toro. I love this. Great one. Love it.
Fantastic stuff. And of course, he channels his inner Jerry Lewis. There's a great physical comedy from Tom Hanks in this one. Kind of, you know, slapstick stuff knocking around as well. It's Turner and Hooch, Sunday afternoon on Film 4. Enjoy it.
Can I see you again? Maybe we can take a walk?
No.
No.
No. Well, you see, I'm starting to like you, and if we go on a walk, I'm just going to like you even more. And then one day we might even end up in love, and everything will go along fine for a while, but then one day, bang, you're going to pull your hair out, and you're going to scream, and you're going to say you never want to see me again because I drive you crazy, and I'm left shattered. Now, who needs that? Good night.
Scott Turner had finally found the girl of his dreams.
Oh, God, a woman in my house.
He finally had the perfect relationship.
So you'll be staying another night?
Oh, yes, of course!
When something big happened to change it. Something called hooch.
Wait, whoa! No!
You don't know much about dogs, do you?
This is not my dog.
Now he's being swept off his feet and dragged all over town.
What are you doing to this dog?
I'll just take him for a walk.
All in the name of love.
This dog loves you, boy.
That dog loves you, boy. And he says, I bought him a muffin. He still knocked me to the deck. We've got to move on quickly, I'm afraid, Van. But what's your final recommendation for us?
So my final recommendation from 2008, this was the fourth in the series, very simply titled Rambo, and this was Stallone returning both behind the camera and in front of the camera, in which John Rambo has yet again returned to, East Asia to live in solitude and, pine over all the horrific things he's been forced to do in the name of the US military. However, he's asked by a group of missionaries, will he escort them into Burma to, preach to the masses? He says no. They go without him and get kidnapped, wouldn't you know it?
Who'd have seen that coming?
Only for him. Who could? Apparently he could. That comes up in the trailer. He was able to see it coming, and the head of the mission comes to him and says, our guys are there. We've got a team of mercenaries, but no one knows where they are. Will you lead them in? And so Stallone goes, from his solitude to having to lead this righteous crusade into Burma to liberate, just so happens to be a group of mercenaries led by the very gorgeous Julie Benz. I mean, I feel like they could have made it maybe make a bit more sense without the gorgeous Julie Benz, in the lead. But this is absolutely brutal, horrifically violent. It's Stallone, long hair, bandana, tight-fitting t-shirts, but, in his pensioner years, it's a badass romp. I absolutely love this. So it's the fourth one in the series. There was a fifth one, and it was an absolutely dire finale.
Stinker, yeah.
Absolutely stinker. But I think the fourth one is the best one after the first. So Rambo is on Sunday, 10 p.m. on ITV4. Absolutely check this out. I've got a clip for you. This is Rambo being enlisted for his rescue mission.
There we go. Make sure you download Van's fantastic podcast Off Screen at 8 o'clock, available this morning for all good podcast providers. Meanwhile, over to you, John Rambo.
How do you know they're alive?
Because we've been in contact with the Karen freedom fighters who say they think they know where they were taken. And I was given the name of an ex-military American local from the embassy who put me in touch with men who say they have experience in this part of the world.
Mercenaries?
Yes. I don't have any other choice. You know the exact spot. We need you to take these men to where you let our people off.
When are they ready to leave?
When you are.
Well, they're really going to leave. Well, Van Kyne's got to leave us now, of course, but download his Off-Screen podcast from 8 o'clock this morning, available on all good providers. A great roundup of all the big latest movie news and reviews. Meanwhile, we're live, my friends, till 5. For the moment, though, that's a wrap.